Before you watch my interview with David Vance, a couple of things that you should know. It was recorded live. I was struggling with my internet. It was hilarious because the kids came home and made a load of noise. Then I decided enough was enough. I needed proper broadband and a pint. So I bailed and finished the interview at the pub. It's quite a good chat with David, actually. It's quite long and you can just listen to it as a podcast if you're driving. We cover a lot in the podcast, a bit about Joe Biden being in Ireland, a little bit about trans in motorsport. Obviously, we do some electric vehicle bashing and we finish up in a sort of round the houses conclusion. I think my beer had got to me by this point, talking about how everything is connected and the end of the world is nigh. So if you've got an hour, because I think it is an hour long, enjoy this one because I really like David. He's a lot of fun. We seem to get on really well together and I thought this was a really fun chat. The next one will definitely be in the pub and I'll probably have a beer beforehand as well as one during. So enjoy and let me know what you think in the comments.
Yeah, so without further ado, he's been with you before. He's back by popular demand. We can't give him away. And of course, I'm talking about our good friend of the channel, Geoff Buys Cars. Welcome, Geoff.
Mr. David Vance, good to see you again. Well, we've had some technical problems in my house this evening, but we are here now.
Technical shenanigans. I blame climate change. Can I just say, Geoff, it's we're all suffering from it, mainly because of all you people driving diesel and petrol cars, destroying the planet. So really, you're responsible.
I fully agree. I am quite happy to take... My Volvo 850 diesel is to blame for all of climate change. The floods in Spain that are happening right now, that was me earlier on. I accelerated particularly hard up a hill. There was a lot of smoke, and I immediately saw on Twitter that floods were trending. So that was my bad. But I mean, to be fair, we're in 2023. We've got the internet's better, broadband is better. And I don't know about you, David, but I swear it's harder and harder to make calls and do things. I've spent about an hour this evening trying to get my internet working.
Yeah. Well, in many ways, you see, when you live in clown world, although things look like they might work, they don't necessarily work. But I was giving people some good advice, Geoff, before we came on. And that is, I'm not technical at all. But if you're having problems, tech problems, top tip, have you thought of turning it off and turning it back on again? I did.
Absolutely. I always go back to the IT crowd, and that's what they recommend. And 9 out of 10 times it works, unless you're driving an electric car on the motorway. It's a bit awkward, isn't it? But
we'll talk about them. Hey, I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you got a chance to see it today, but I was just saying before we come on, Geoff, we had Mr. Joe Biden in town today, and it was very exciting. I was very excited about it. He went to Windsor Castle. But here's the thing. There was this massive cavalcade, sort of, with the beast was in the middle of it. And there was all these huge limos, about 20 or 30 of them. It was unbelievable, huge. Yeah, exactly. I mean, how many polar bears have died as a consequence of that? And yet Joe tells us that he is to the fore of fighting, getting the climate change under control, getting us to the all-important net zero. How do you rationalize that, Geoff, from your perspective?
There's a lot to digest there, isn't there? I mean, let's see. Let's start with, have we not got armoured cars that we could lend him? Because we could have saved him the trouble, couldn't we, really? It's not an easy thing to fly over a cavalcade of cars because, I mean, I'm willing to be corrected on this one as well. It's not just the one car, because all the other cars, I think they're Escalades that make up the rest of the cavalcade. They're all flown over as well. So, I mean... If we're going to save the planet, right, and if we're going to sort climate change out, I've got some real basic bits of advice, and we can probably start there, can't we? I mean, the second question is, you are blessed to have had the visit from Mr. Biden himself. Has he managed to work out which war is going on?
Yeah.
Because did you see the other day they asked him how the war was going, and he said they thought they were doing okay in Iraq?
I saw that, yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's constant comedy. I mean, he's comedy gold, Geoff. Joe Biden. But I was just saying again before you come in that he was wandering around. He was given the the old ceremonial guard to inspect at Windsor Castle. I mean, he looked distracted. Not surprised. He put his arm around King Charles the Green. He embraced him. I mean, and so somebody was pointing out maybe he was asking where was the Queen.
I tell you what we can say though. If we have transitioned completely into clown world, I'm glad we've got a strong leader because he's hilarious.
Yes, yeah. I think that's probably a good way to look upon it. Actually, yeah. I mean,
just someone give him a red nose and some big shoes, and we're there.
Yeah, well, that day isn't far. Well, of course, I mean, that's similarly true here in the UK with Rishi Sunak, who was telling everybody earlier, Geoff, that he and Biden did a fantastic meeting, a great, meeting of minds, UK, US, brothers in arms. I think the meeting lasted for about 40 minutes or so, but it was a great meeting. And I only can imagine what that 40 minutes of conversation, can you imagine 40 minutes? Oh, there we go. Oh, here we are. Here, Jed's put up here we go. Look at all that. Look at all that diesel, or is it petrol? I wonder what those things run on, Geoff. You're the expert.
So we've got there's a Jag. So we've got a police bike and a police Jag, but then there's an American car and another and another and another, and I think another. So that's 5 cars that were brought over. And if we pretend that, I mean, there's a Mercedes minibus, and if we assume that everything behind that is British or owned by our services, then there's only 5 vehicles that have been flown over in a plane. But just ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah. But that's the thing about these hypocrites. They have such a go at us. And we'll talk about this, Geoff. The way they're trying to take away our freedom to travel where we want, drive where we want. They want to do that. And because of using this excuse of the terrible nature of our traditional forms of energy. But these are the people. I mean, these are the people that are using it in an off-the-scale manner. I mean, do you think that they don't see their hypocrisy?
Are you still there?
Yeah.
It is. It's absolutely ludicrous. I've got a little video coming up on this later in the week, because what I want to do is I want to talk about some of the new things that they want to bring in to save the climate. But then I want to juxtapose that with 2 other news stories which have also broken this week. And they've broken with the same sort of fanfare. So on the one hand, you've got, this is what we're going to have to do to save the planet, eat less meat, drive your car less. And then you turn the page and it says, brilliant, great news. We've just sold 500 jetliners to India. And then the next page, it says, brilliant, great news. We've just launched.
Oh,
these things can't all go together. How do they work together? They, for anyone with half a brain, these things don't process. So you hang on a minute. I can't have steak on my plate, but we've sold 500 jets to India. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, but you don't worry about steak. You can have bugs on your plate. So don't be bitching about that. Bugs, grasshoppers, locusts, lovely bugs. I completely agree. Actually, Geoff, seriously though, you need to have complete cognitive dissonance to be able to go through that and try and because it doesn't work. None of it works. A bit like. Listen, one of the things I love about Geoff's YouTube, which of course we've told everyone to make sure that they follow Geoff and they support Geoff over and Geoff buys cars over on the YouTubes, which is a platform I'm not even prepared to stream to because they're atrocious behavior with me. But Geoff, you're very good. You're very good in a lot of these topics, but on EVs, I mean, we chatted about them the last time. But I mean, I'm someone who's transitioned, not in a gender-conforming way. Because I do love tech, and I've transitioned from being, well, maybe an EV to, are you kidding me? Get out of here. There's no way I would touch an EV. Hell would freeze over before I would touch an EV. And I was up in a car showroom, a German car showroom, and chatting to the sales guys about, the EVs. And the funny thing was, they didn't seem to be pushing them as hard as I thought. They did have them there, but I'm not sure. Do you think, are people buying them, Geoff? What do you think?
I don't see it. I mean, I've done 3 videos on EVs on Friday, and I think cynics would say to me, Geoff, you're just milking the EV thing for all the YouTube hits. But from my point of view, the electric vehicle itself is sort of the gift that keeps on giving, because I don't need to do any hard work to go and dish the dirt on these EVs. They do it for themselves. They're useless. People go and buy them. They don't have the range. They cost more to charge than they expect. But what's happening, and when you dig into the nitty gritty of the videos I put up last week, Essentially, what's happening is because of the incentives that the government have put on them, your company car tax and your fleet policies, businesses are incentivized to go and buy EVs. So they are selling to businesses. However, they're not selling to private buyers. And the problem that we have there is right now in the second-hand market, we are seeing all of the EVs that have just come off 3-year lease deals, and we're struggling to sell them. So what are we going to do with all the EVs that have been sold in the last 3 years that haven't yet had their lease deal expired and have not yet come onto the market? There aren't the buyers there for the EVs that are on the market at the moment, and that marketplace is only going to grow. So your Porsche EVs, and I think to some degree your Jaguars, your sort of premium luxury models, I do think there are still people that are buying those because they still see them as sort of a status symbol and something a bit different and something a bit flash. So I think those are selling much faster. However, your more day-to-day EVs, your Corsa, your Nissan Leaf, there just isn't enough incentive. The product itself isn't good enough to get you over buying a petrol or a diesel. And people are starting to realize that. Yeah.
But even the hybrid ones are a problem. I'm about to change it, but I have a Porsche hybrid. And you see, because you touched on this on your video you did on servicing EVs, but even hybrids, this business of, I'm just going to leave the car and I want you to have a look at it, because it's a hybrid, all of a sudden, we only have a hybrid technician in on a Monday and a Thursday, so the rest of the week, so we can bring you in about a month's time. I couldn't believe how bad the service was, and that's for a hybrid, not for a full EV.
Yeah, and it gets worse on full EV, because I think from memory, Volkswagen have only got 3 places where they can actually service these EVs. But from what I'm finding from I put a video up last week about what we do with EVs when they're damaged from an insurance point of view. And that was eye-opening. You've got these insurance yards where they're fixing cars. You've got to have a 15-meter radius around each EV, and it will wipe people's businesses out. But what a lot of people are saying, independent garages are saying, well, there's no chance that I'm going to train any of my guys on how to repair EVs, because you've got major liability issues, not just in the, okay, let's say I'm a small, I've got 5 staff, I've got 3 ramps. Well, what do I do if an EV burns to the ground on my ramp? Well, it destroys my business. I've then got liability for the car. And what if it kills somebody? It's not worth the risk for them to get involved in that side of the business. So nobody's going to want to touch them. That's where we're going to get to with it.
Yeah, that actually was a fascinating interview or video you did, Geoff, because when you start to think about it, like the amount of distancing that you would need to have between EVs in a repair place, I can't imagine this in any way practical. Can you?
No, not at all. Not knowing what businesses are like and how much space means money. I just can't see that they're going to be willing to take it on.
No, that was what I concluded, because curiously enough, I had reason to be in a repair centre, because about 3 weeks ago, some lady drove into my car very kindly. She reversed into it. So I had occasion to go to a repair centre to get it sorted. And I mean, that repair centre, because as you said in your video, space is money. So it's really important that you maximize the number of vehicles to maximize your profit. Somebody's wondering, does Jed know you have a Porsche? He'll be going on stroke, not on a stroke. No, maybe on strike, but certainly not on a stroke. And so as you were saying, I was looking at that garage, imagining it with the what is it, the distance between them, Geoff? You could have, but if for a safety point of view, yeah, there's just no way. No, and that's in Northern. I mean, I live in Northern Ireland in a rural environment. If I lived in England, where it's a lot more people and a lot more cars, I can't conceive of any of that working. But no, so I was fascinated in that. But never mind all that. I was really impressed about a video you put out again a little while ago now, because we've made our way through Pride Month. And I mean, I was moved to tears. I was moved during Pride Month at the corporate engagement on this issue. But you picked up on something which I'm not surprised about, Geoff, anything anymore. It's impossible to be surprised. But I did pick up on the fact that you started to ask questions about, what was it, the ambassador for getting people. Well, talk us through it.
So what happened and what was sent to me was that Motorsport UK, who are the UK's governing body of motorsport, and essentially you have to register with Motorsport UK to race. So everybody essentially is involved with Motorsport UK one way or another. And they're involved with another splinter organisation called Women on Track. Now, Women on Track do some great work in getting girls and women into motorsport, which, let's be honest, is not going to be an easy thing to do. So they go and find this new, they come up with this new role, which is an ambassador for this Women on Track business.
Lovely. That's lovely.
But it is lovely because they do great work. And part of that work is to get primary school aged girls engaged with racing. So who do they go and choose to get primary school aged girls involved with racing as their Women on Track ambassador? Well, it's a bloke. It's a racing driver called Charlie Martin, who transitioned from being a bloke in his 40s. So it's not even like it's a young tranny. Can you say that? It's not even like it's a young tranny. It's a bloke in his 40s who spent most of his motor racing career racing around with a Willie. Now, my beef with that, and I like your platform because I can talk much more candidly. But my beef with that is, what has a bloke in his 40s who's turned himself into a woman quite recently got to teach 8-year-old girls about, well, anything, to be honest? And I was absolutely staggered by the whole thing. But I think for me, it just goes to show the length and breadth that the hijacked pride agenda has really gone to, because it really has infiltrated every aspect of the corporate world.
Oh, it totally has. And you know, the point that you were making, and it's a good point, that encouraging young girls to get into racing and you know, it's all good and to be familiar with cars and how to, you know, drive them, you know, in a good way. It's all good stuff. But what they've done is the worst conceivable thing. Number one, by the way, just to pick you up in a slight detail, he didn't transition to being a woman. He transitioned in thinking he was a woman, but he ain't a woman. What's this? W Series season possibly stopped due to early financial problems. I'm not sure what that's about.
Let's do that one in a moment. Let's finish up what we're saying.
Back to my point. So he's still a man, FYI. Still a man. Right, carry on.
Yeah. So he's still a bloke, and as we said, that his role within that is to get women involved in motorsport. And there's so many different sides to this debate, but the one that gets me is, why aren't all the women up in arms about it? I don't understand that. Their role model has been replaced by a bloke, and you're not seeing women complaining about this. And I don't understand that. There's so many fantastic female role models within motor racing that would have been, you know, a perfect fit. And it just seems to me like, I don't understand. If I was a woman and I'd worked my butt off to get into motor racing and to be the best and to be fast and to compete with the blokes, for them to go and put a bloke in, you know, the leading role of inspiring young people to do what I've done, I would find that horrendously offensive. And we're not seeing that sort of pushback. And I don't understand it.
It's very weird. I don't know if you saw a story today, but it took place in the Netherlands. And in a beauty contest over there, Miss Netherlands 2023 is a bloke. Someone who is transition. I know, is a bloke. But that's bad. But the worst bit is what you just said. I wasn't saying I was watching it, but I watched a clip of it, right? And all the other women applauded Geoff as this male, biological male. Okay, they may have gone through some degrees of, I don't know, whatever, surgery, whatever, but they're still biologically what they were the day they were born. But the women were applauding it. And that's the point. I mean, it's your point. It's like, why are women applauding their own demise? You know, because we do see a kickback in other sports. What's Jez? There's really two formula for women, but only one has gone broke. Right.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. And like you said, I think what you said there is you absolutely nailed it. It's a gigantic betrayal. But what's interesting as well is, and again, it's this one's a struggle to get my head around it. So it's all about inclusion. Okay, so everybody has to be equal. So you get the same thing in women's football as well. So okay, women should be paid the same as men in football. And then you've got motor racing as that, we should focus on motor racing as much as we do men's motor racing. But the fact of the matter is, no one's watching it. And if nobody's watching it, then there's no money. And that's what's happened to the women's Formula One series. I've not addressed this yet on a video, and I've just seen another comment come in there saying, as a gay man, I strongly object to corporate sponsorship of LGTB pride events. And you're not alone. The amount of people I've had contact me who may be members of this so-called LGBTQ community who said, Geoff, you're absolutely spot on. And I've been amazed. I would have thought that any transsexual people that are watching my videos would be like, I can't watch him. He's got a big mouth and whatever. But I've had a number of people contact me who are, whether they're transitioned or not, it doesn't matter to me, but they're living as the opposite sex. And they contacted me and said, Geoff, do you know what? I sometimes find your videos hard to watch, but you're spot on in what you say. And that says something, doesn't it?
Yeah, I find exactly the same. I mean, I have had on several of the podcasts either trans people or people who are very friendly with them saying, this lot don't represent us. These activists, Geoff, that's not us. We want to live our lives. We can do it in our privacy of, just like we need to live our lives. We don't have to necessarily flaunt it in the street. But the corporate thing, I mean, I've seen someone says here, Lewis Hamilton's rainbow helmet was the pinnacle of strong and brave. I presume that was at the Grand Prix. Do
you know what? That's made me laugh because I spoke a little bit about Lewis Hamilton yesterday because he came out, probably not the right term, but he came out and said that he can stand by Just Stop Oil protesters if they're peaceful. And this is a guy who, to put it frankly, he's driving the flagship of the oil industry. So how can he possibly come around and say that he's okay with Just Stop Oil protesting? And a lot of people have defended him, saying, "Oh, he was defending our rights to peaceful protest." I'm sorry, but look at his track record on all this sort of stuff. It's an interesting one, and I've had a very lengthy email sent to me this evening breaking down a lot of more detail about Lewis Hamilton and what's behind him and what's going on behind the scenes. So I won't comment too much on this stage, other than to say it's top level hypocrisy.
Now there we can see Lewis in his private jet fighting climate change as only multi-millionaires can do. I mean, it's a tough life. I don't know how he finds the strength to be able to do it. But I mean, actually, Formula One. I mean, is that not, as you said, that actually must be like the epicenter of the oil industry almost, in a way.
It's got to be, hasn't it? I mean, the whole car industry. Has pinned itself around Formula One, well, since the beginning of time. Traditionally, what happens is we see something on the Formula One track, and 12, 18 months later, we see a diluted version of that technology on our road cars. It's the way that it has always been. Yeah. So the fact that he can go ahead and say something like this is ludicrous. And then you've got then Formula E, which is the electric series, which, from what I can tell from the internet, people just can't stand. They just don't want to watch it.
I've never watched it. I've never seen it. I didn't even know about it, actually. So that's so do they have it's not the same drivers, though, is it? Driving
it's not the same. It's not the same drivers, but again, it's a sort of carbon copy of the infrastructure in many ways. So they won't be on the same tracks. But I was having a conversation with someone earlier on today about Formula One. Well, each Formula One team has maybe, you think the Joe Biden's cavalcade is embarrassing from a climate point of view. We'll take a look at what the Formula One teams are doing. There might be 15 articulated lorries for any one team. And after every single race, they come back to the UK. So Formula E, if we're talking about saving the planet, well, unless every single truck and lorry and support vehicle is going to run on, renewable energy, then the whole thing is a farce anyway, isn't it? We might as well go to our local community hall on a Thursday night and watch the radio-controlled car racing, because it's the same thing.
Yeah, well, that's what I was. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, there's a sort of a certain resemblance to it, isn't there? But what's the performance of the E1 cars like then? Is it equivalent to the F1s, or because I speak a position of total no knowledge. What's it like? But I'm curious.
I think you probably know more than me on it, to be honest.
I mean, I mean, I watched it. I watched our producer Jed is a huge fan of Formula One, and he watches all the stuff. I watch, you know, bits and bobs of it. Yeah, I mean, as you say though, what you see on those tracks, down a couple of years down the road, that's what's in your vehicle. That's what it's all about. I mean, it's a completely commercial thing that they're trying to do. Thing about electric cars, one thing I would say, the acceleration of them's quite good though, isn't it? I mean, they do zoom from 0 to 60 really fast.
Yeah, absolutely. As does pretty much every electric car that I've driven. But it's at that point that they run out of steam. And again, that's probably not the right phrase to say, is it?
yeah. I've got to admit, I've watched some of them travel along Teslas, for example, and certainly from a traffic light, you know, to wherever they're going, they're like a bat out of hell, and that's probably quite a good thing, I suppose. Maybe, I mean, I do like fast performance, but as you said, then you got to go onto the motorway. The funny thing is with the EVs, once you put them in the motorway, that's like the highway to hell for them, really, isn't it? Because that's when the problem really start, isn't it? Yeah,
and I think we've said this before. You know, that's the kind of irony. You get your diesel Volvo and you get up to 60 mile an hour, 70 mile an hour on the motorway, and you're at the absolute optimum for saving the planet in terms of the amount of fuel that you're using. And with an EV, it's the opposite. And I've noticed some comments coming in about the Mac Master. He's just posted a video this evening, and I actually watched it whilst I was making my shepherd's pie for the kids. And he's talking about how much money he's lost on his EV. And he came out at something like he paid 120 grand for it, and it's just been valued at £59,000. So the losses that these cars are making are astronomical. So if he wanted to hand his electric car back right now, it'd cost him something like £27,000 out of his pocket. So he can't even get out of this car. You know, doesn't necessarily want it, but at the same time can't get out of it.
I'll tell you, I saw, you know, the Conservative former minister Nadine Dorris. She had a column in the press last week about the fact that she had handed back her EV. She only had it for, I think, 5 months, and she just decided, just not practical. Just not practical. She dropped it back, but she's still 100% committed to net zero. What a hypocrite.
Well, yeah, absolutely, as are they all. I used that article. I dropped a little bit of it in one of my videos when I was talking about the values dropping, because her experience was, you know, she could do that whole talking as a mother thing, but she was talking as a mother. She'd been on a trip with her daughter. Yeah. It was horrendous, freezing cold winter. And if you read the article, it made so much sense. It sounded horrendous. You know, she can't find a charger. The only charger she gets is like in a truck park or something. She has to walk miles in the rain, and it's Christmas Eve, whatever. But the funny thing is, there's probably been 4 or 5 or 6 of these stories, and they all follow the exact same thing from these journalists. And eventually they say, you know, electric cars don't work. And yet, how could, like you say, there's the hypocrisy. I'm giving my electric car back because it's rubbish, but you're all going to sort out net zero for us.
100%. I mean, I see comments here as well. Someone saying that they're going to have electric ferries across the Irish Sea, which should be interesting technology because that Irish Sea can get very rough. Also, banning diesel trucks is going to screw up family-owned haulage firms in rural Ireland. Yeah, just reading some of the comments here, Geoff.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And again, that's where you end up on like a whole nother rabbit hole of conspiracy theory. Because if you say, right, they want to go to fully EV by X date, you then end up doing the maths, you know, on the back of your hand, and you think the only way this is going to work is if they get rid of a hell of a lot of the people. And then well, that's a conspiracy theory.
Well, there's 2 things. Well, we love conspiracy theories in this platform, mainly because they're all right. But that's one possibility, Geoff, which you rightly point out. Maybe population is dramatically reduced, or the alternative is they impose their draconian 15-20-minute cities, neighborhoods, whatever, and people don't have the same requirement to have cars anymore. And I think it's probably somewhere between the 2 of them myself, you know. But I don't see. I honest to God cannot see how. If we move forward in time to 2033, say, so 10 years, I mean, it's going to be a mess. Nothing can work. They cannot go the way that they're trying to go. And us have the same levels of ownership in the UK of vehicles, and indeed in the States and the other countries around. Geoff, it doesn't compute.
I think where I've got to with that and looking towards the future is I think it's naive to think that we are going to be able to carry on as we are. I feel like there's going to be some sort of cataclysm. There's going to be something that will happen in the next, it's got to come before 2030. So I believe that there's something big planned for us. I'm not completely sure what that is, whether it is a financial collapse, whether it is, allegedly I watched a video last night from Redacted that's saying that Ukraine and Russia are now on the verge of nuclear war. And I know, we've been on the verge of nuclear war before, but it just feels like there's a hotting up, there's a speeding up. And I'm just hoping that things are speeding up in the correct direction. I know there's a lot of people who are working very hard to do some good for, the likes of you and I and all the Joe public. But whether we could do enough and whether we'll have the time and whether we've got the power to stop these people, we should see. I think we're in for an interesting few years, that's for sure.
I certainly think so. I also think that it's entirely possible other things happen. I mean, again, today, and this is the clown world we live in. I mean, Biden's here and Sunak are here to pledge their everlasting commitment to Ukraine in its courageous battle against Russia, even if that means giving them cluster munitions, even if it means getting them into NATO. And Geoff, the inevitable consequence of that may well be a limited nuclear exchange, potentially on the European landmass. And I don't know about you, but I look at that and think, well, yeah, that could probably change things a bit, and sometimes with these people, we're too naive in thinking, they wouldn't do that, would they? I mean, they wouldn't lock down the world for a virus that some think might never have existed. They'd never do that, would they?
I didn't realize that was why Mr. Biden was over there, to pledge his allegiance to the Ukraine war, which again is a conversation in and of itself. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to pause for a moment and run to a slightly different location. If you
you go to an undisclosed location, come back in when you can. I'll keep it going.
2 seconds, I'll come back.
You do that, yeah. So listen, I see your comments there about the high-speed train rail between Holyhead to Dublin was shelved yet again. Irish in Manchester, lots of good comments coming there. They want to ban all cars and make people totally reliant. Well, yes, Irish in Manchester. Look, I live in the middle of the country. As I'm looking out here, I've just got fields around me, right? One reason I object to paying taxes and stuff, I get nothing for the taxes, literally nothing, not even my sewage taken care of, right? But without a car, I couldn't really live where I live. And lots of other country people will be the same. We're all in the one boat. If there's no public transport passes which is a reasonably busy road, but there's no public transport on it. There's no buses. There's no trams, there's no trains. So for me not to have a car would mean either I get on a bike, and frankly, at my age, I don't think that's going to be happening, or I have to move. And I think that that's what they want. I think, I'll talk to Geoff when he comes back. I think they would be quite happy to force rural dwelling people like me closer into towns and cities. And then once they have us in there, boom, we're controlled. So I'm highly suspicious of the motives on this one. But nobody should underestimate, folks, the centrality of the car to us as a society. And hi City Troll, by the way, I see you there. I just wanted to acknowledge you too. It's the same in the States as well. The automobile opened up freedom for so many of us. Now, the uber wealthy, the cabal, they've always had that ability to go wherever they want, but not ordinary people. But we got that, and the automobile provides that to us. So, I can jump in my car, be in the local village in about maybe 5-10 minutes, in the local town maybe in about 15 minutes or so. So it makes life so convenient. And I never thought I could be contemplating a future where I mightn't be able to do that, because they'll try, because if they can take that away from us country folks, bring us into the villages and towns and cities, then they have us all where we want. John Lagan talks about Deagle forecasting, yes, the UK population dropping to just 14 million. I don't see that, John. I don't see that unless they hit us with a nuclear bomb or something. That would soon do it. But I do think population will drop down, yes. And over time, though, I don't think by 2025. But Geoff mentioned 2030. 2030 is the year that you got to keep your eye on. You know, by 2030, there's all kinds of things that they can be doing to us to basically imprison us in terms of, you know, digital currency. I've got an exclusive article coming out to you guys on hopefully Wednesday, Thursday. Check out the website on Wednesday, Thursday. So even though we're on holidays, I want to try and write one article. I've been provided with information today from one of my own sources about how I could find out what your bank account balance is for any of you. You think that's possible? It is. I can find it out. I just have to pay a small amount of money through a legitimate legal system, and I'm there. I will reveal all on Wednesday. I'll be checking out each and every one of your individual bank balances. How can you do that, David? You'd be surprised. So anyway, hopefully that will intrigue you. So keep visiting davidvance.net. Even when the podcast stopped for a few days, there will be that content going out there. But Patty says here, America couldn't exist without the car. Yeah, but see, that's the whole point. Maybe the plan is for America not to exist in the way that it always has. And hopefully, Leslie says, you'd be disappointed, David, when I check out her bank balance. I'll be disappointed when I check out my own, Leslie. But, I think on the depopulation thing, I don't think it's going to happen, John, quite that way. But I do think they want to depopulate us. I really, really do think that. And I think there's different ways they can achieve that. And when I talked to David Cartland, I hope you enjoyed the chat I had with Dr. David Cartland a couple of earlier last week. I mean, David did point out the fact that in his medical practice, he was seeing more and more people with fertility problems. So you can get the numbers down in all kinds of different ways. Now I can see in the background this man of many talents, Geoff Buys Cars, is setting himself up in a different location. So once he's ready, give me a thumbs up, and then I'll know that you're okay to come in to chat. Yeah. So let's bring him back in again. Here he is, back again. Hi, Geoff.
Right, we should be better now. So I've moved house. Yeah. I've got no broadband. The house is smaller. The kids all came back at the same time, so I'm just juggling everything. But on the plus side, I am now in the pub because the new house is right next to the pub. So now I'm with you for the rest of the evening. Let's go.
Yeah, I wish you make me feel bad. No, I don't have a plate in front of me. I was just saying, I'll tell you, Geoff, I was just saying there when you were transiting, that we're talking about the car.
I was transitioning.
Yeah, the people. I live in the country. I live in a very rural location, right? Without a car, I couldn't have a life in the way that I'm used to having a life. So it's a couple of miles to the nearest village. It's further to the nearest town. So if they start, I think they want to move people like me, though, out of the country and into these 15, 20-minute neighborhoods, cities, whatever they want to call them, because I think they've got other plans for the country. And the car, this is where the car comes in, Geoff. The car is a symbol of freedom. You make the cars too expensive, too prohibitive, or in other ways just not plausible, and you will start to drain people away from the country. What do you think with your pint? Oh, he's
yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah,
it's a sliding scale of things, and it's all about momentum for them as well. So first thing is to demonize diesel and petrol by moving people over to electric. Now we're starting to see that all electric cars are actually bad after all. They've already moved everybody out of petrol. We've then got low traffic neighbourhoods. We've got low emissions schemes. We're going to 20 mile an hour. I think Wales have just gone to 20 mile an hour everywhere. Everywhere else will be following suit. So at the minute, and again, this is why my channel has gone to where it's gone to. There doesn't really seem to be anyone that is standing up for the motorists. I'm not seeing the big lobby groups, the AA, the insurance companies. Nobody seems to be standing up and saying, hang on a minute, all of this stuff that is being done is targeting the motorists, and those are our customers. And I'm confused as to why there isn't a coherent lobby. Why does the car, the freedom to travel, there is no lobby for that. But as you say, everything seems to be about making travel more difficult. One of the things I've been discussing on my channel is the amount of roadworks that are going on everywhere at the moment, particularly at night on the motorways. Now, in the old days, if roadworks needed to be done on a motorway, they might close one lane, maybe two, but they wouldn't shut down the whole motorway. Now, I noticed the other day when I was travelling around that pretty much every motorway I needed to go on in the evening was closed and diverted. And when I made a video about that, sure enough, everybody in the comments, well, this is happening up and down the country. So what's going on? Are they just doing all the work on the roads because of the financial year? Or is there really a deliberate plan to put us off motoring by making motoring incredibly unenjoyable? Because it's so simple that that's the case. It's not the motor.
It's exactly that. It's exactly that. They want to make motoring not a pleasure. Just like if you want to go through an airport and have a miserable experience, it's exactly the same. The things that we've always done, flying abroad for holidays, driving to nice parts of the UK to see things, they want to make that tough. Maybe not a pleasure at all, actually. And I think that's why they do it. Because in July, it's not the end of the financial year. The end of the financial year was March, April. So, there's no excuse for this. But as you say, I mean, it's pretty widespread that they do this. Loads of roadworks everywhere.
And how many times do you try and go somewhere on a bank holiday and you're driving through perhaps somewhere you've not been before and there's a lane closed because of something or other, and you're thinking to yourself, why today? Why did somebody at that council not have a conversation and say, look, it's a bank holiday, we need to remove the cones for the Monday, because none of it seems to be happening. So there must have been some sort of secret memo that's come through from government that says, right, we need to make travel as hard as possible, slow down your traffic lights, get your roadworks up and close the motorways, because that's what it feels like on the ground.
Do you think 20 miles an hour is like, I find it impossible to drive that slow, although if I have to, I will. But I would, it's awful, doesn't it? 20 miles per hour is madness.
100%. I think if you're in it, the thing is, when you're driving around, if you're a sensible driver, you can tell where it's appropriate to go as slowly as 20 miles an hour. You're crawling past the school, there's cars parked on both sides. Most of the time, I'll be going through at less than 20 miles an hour because it's appropriate to do so and it's correct for the circumstances. However, trying to do that all the time, like you say yourself, it's extremely difficult to keep your car below 20 miles an hour because there's also a climate emissions issue here, because 30 I can pretty comfortably do in third gear for most cars. But when you get down to 20 miles an hour, you're somewhere between first and second, depending on the vehicle, and therefore you're most likely going to be polluting more because you're probably running more revs of the engine.
Yeah, that's a bloody good point, actually. Yeah. So again, it's counterintuitive. I mean, Jed's telling us that 20 miles an hour is the law. Yeah, it might be the law, but what we're querying is, why is it the law? Who decided? Geoff, I completely agree. There's a couple of primary schools, and if I was driving past them, I don't need someone to tell me. I would go, because so conscious of little kids and all of that. But I'm talking about, you get these 20 mile per hour zones now. It can be a whole road system for there's no danger. But yet they're doing it.
And we're not talking about variable limits as well. So what we're talking is a blanket 20 mile an hour limit.
Blanket.
Patrolled by cameras. So you're going to be driving through there at 11:30 at night when there's nobody around. You can see for miles and you're going to be penalised for doing 24 miles an hour. I'm sorry, makes absolutely zero sense to me.
Yeah. See, I think there's been a war on the motorist for quite a while, but it's speeding up, Geoff. It's harder now to be a motorist in 2023 than it was even, say, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Certainly when I was young, it was a free world. But that's different now. There's been so much going on. Why is the motorist public enemy number one? I'd like to know.
I think the answer to that is because freedom is public enemy number one, and for some reason there's this constant desire to stop us doing any of the things that we enjoy doing. It's interesting you say about motoring. I mean, we've both been driving for a fair amount of time, but actually getting into motoring these days, finding a driving instructor, getting a driving test, going through all the system, getting insurance, it is unbelievably difficult. And I've had some people contact me. There are problems. There are problems going on with actually getting a driving license that I wasn't even aware of. You can't get a test. There's no instructors. People don't want to do it. It's really quite shocking for the youngsters who, let's be honest, they're not exactly inspired to get out and drive, are they? Because they've seen their parents driving around, they've seen what the roads are like, they've seen how much it costs. So there's going to be a drop-off of people even wanting to drive. And the fact that they don't want to drive, they're chopping off their ability to go out and do stuff, and they're giving up freedom without really realising what freedom they're giving up.
And then the other thing, Geoff, you see the state of some of the roads. Like that surround me, some of the potholes would be like something you'd see on the moon if only we'd ever gone there. It's the amazing, these bloody big craters on the road. And again, I was speaking to a guy in a garage about this, and he was saying to me, "Oh yeah, Dave, you have no idea how some people go over a couple of these bad potholes, and that can really damage their suspension and the whole way their whole car drives." So I mean, so again, they're charging us more than ever to be a motorist and providing us with less than ever, and that's not fair on motorists, I don't think.
Absolutely. And again, this is a problem nationwide. There's roadworks everywhere, but the roads don't ever really seem to improve. Speed bumps as well. Speed bumps are going up everywhere. And I really enjoy the emails that I get sent from people, because I get emails from all walks of life. And I had a tyre fitter email me the other day saying he's seeing so much more wear on tyres on the inside of the wheels from people straddling speed bumps. So it's not that the tyres are worn from, excess use from mileage. Yeah. It's the people going over that many speed bumps that they're wearing their tyres out in a place that the tyre isn't very strong and would never normally wear anywhere. I hadn't even thought about speed bumps and tyre wear until that email. And he's absolutely right, because there's more speed bumps going up everywhere.
Yeah, and as you say, people will try to get around them by sort of slaloming their way either side of the speed bump if they can. So again, it is the war on the motorist, and Geoff, it's been talked about for years, but I actually do think we're moving into almost end stage where the motorist is vilified unless they make the ultimate sacrifice and buy an EV, at which point they may as well not even be a motorist, because I think that is, I just don't think it's practical. I honest to God don't think it is. Unless you're in a position where you don't drive very much. That's the only thing. If you're doing maybe, 5,000 miles a year or less, maybe they're okay in those circumstances, Geoff. But then what does that tell you about future plans?
Well, I agree. And I'll always say in my videos, and when I get comments from people that have got EVs, there are certain people that they do work for. And I can't argue with that. If you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 grand and you want to go buy a used EV and it works for you and you can charge it at home, to some degree, I can say, well, that's brilliant, because they're heavily discounted from what they were new. Go and do it. That's fine if it works for you. But we go back into the conspiracy sort of thing where, again, we have to say, is there enough materials to replace everyone's car with an EV, and can the grid cope? Because if the answer is no, there's not enough materials, and no, the grid can't cope, then there's a different agenda at play. And then suddenly you go down that rabbit hole again, don't you?
Oh yeah. But the point is, the answer to those two questions is no and no. No, the grid can't cope, and no. I mean, where are they getting the lithium from? Pluto? Where's all this lithium going to be coming from for the batteries?
Well, again, this is what we're seeing. So, we've done cobalt, and we've done that. Cobalt we know is in the batteries, and then you get all the articles that come out saying cobalt is bad. And then I've noticed the trend. We're now seeing lithium is bad. More articles on lithium. Yep. And then it'll be nickel next, where nickel is bad. And they're just working their way through. So as I said, what we've done is we've gone, your petrol car is bad, your diesel car is bad, your EV is bad. Here's a bike, but it needs a number plate. And that's terrifying. Yeah.
It's funny, actually. You said that the only way I could exist where I live is if they do all this, Geoff, which I think they will try to do, is to have a bike. And honest to God, at my age, I'm not getting on a bike. Sorry, I'm not doing that. I'll get a horse before we get on a bike. I'm not getting on a bloody bike. But that's what I think that's the agenda.
It makes me laugh because you've got all of this Sadiq. You've got all of this Sadiq Khan London stuff, and he's trying to push everybody to be. You've got this term called active travel, and the active travel tagline is just terrifying because it doesn't mean let's all get fit and healthy. What it means is you ain't going anywhere in your car. But that's hilarious because Sadiq Khan, he's put a projection out. He says there will be, I forget what he calls them, but they're basically van bikes. So it's a bike, I don't know, it's like got a caddy on it. And you could travel with stuff in your bike, but it's still a bike. And he's saying, well, there's going to be more of these on the roads. And what's hilarious is just one word, the weather. The weather in this country for 6 months of the year is so cold that most people are not going to want to get on a bike. And that's not counting the days when it's raining. So it's like the future is just torturous. Can you imagine trying to get 2 kids onto a bike in the morning in January when it's raining? The idea is terrifying.
No, but yet, do you not think that what Sadiq Khan's trying to do in London, that's the template for all the other cities, isn't it? I think, what he's doing today, Manchester, Leeds, Birmingham, you name it, Liverpool, they're all going to follow if they can.
Absolutely, and in his role as chairman of C40 Cities, he is the flagship. He is flying the flag, and he has to push it through, and he has to be seen to push it through. But there's plenty of questions as to whether he has the legal ability to actually do it. So far, with low emission zone fines, I've been through the Birmingham ones twice, the Bristol ones once, and after ignoring a number of threatening letters, nothing more happened about it. And then you've got someone like Piers Corbyn, who racked up 61 grand. So I saw Piers Corbyn yesterday and he was telling me £61,000 was valued as to what the debt was against his Vauxhall Cavalier. So then a debt collector took the car illegally, but after he phoned Citizens Advice, it turned out that they actually have to give you 7 days notice before they auction your car. So what the authorities then tried to do to Piers is move the auction. It was going to go through in Essex and then Scotland and all over the country. Eventually, his car went through the auction in Hereford and just went along and bought it back. 800 quid. Where's all the £61,000 fines gone? Well, he's got his car back. It's bizarre. I don't think they actually have the legal right to charge you this money. And it's questionable. I think it's just a threat. People get this piece of paper in the post and they think, oh crap, I better pay that. But from my experience, if you just ignore them, they go away. And I think that to some degree is what we need to be doing for all of these policies. Just ignore them, laugh at them, and then ignore them. I do not consent. I'm sorry, this is not for me. That's what you want to do. I'm not involved.
I completely agree. To me, that was the lesson of COVID, actually. We shouldn't, well, some of us didn't, but no consent, no compliance, just laugh at it. We're not going to be threatened and bullied or coerced. We're going to do the thing that we think is right for us. I think as a society, if we did that, and there's still a chance that some of us, a goodly number will perhaps, then that puts them in much more of a precarious situation. Anyway, Geoff, I am conscious that your pint glass is getting reduced. I'm conscious of the time as well. So what I'm going to do is, as I said, Geoff, this is the first in-pub interview I've ever done. So I'm really pleased that we've got to your local. Even more impressed that it's just next door. I can see a lot of respect being shown to you on the street.
Well, I apologise for all the. I apologise for all the running around. As I said, house move and everything not quite where it needs to be. Next time, what I'll do though is I'll just start in the pub, and then by the end of the conversation, we could be into some really crazy stuff. Can I just conclude though? I think the way we can affect change and the way we're going to kick back against this is we have to educate people as to what their rights are. We have to actually educate people as to what they're capable of doing when they do stand up and say no, because most of what is going on right now only goes on because we allow it to do so. So if we remove our consent and if we stand up and say,
I do not comply. I do not agree. I do not believe that you're acting in the best interests of the people that you have a right to do. Well, then we have a legal framework and a legal ability to say, no, I don't consent. And we're going to start seeing a lot more of that in future.
Well, amen to that. Well, Geoff, I look forward to your next pub-based interview. That'll be good fun. But look, thanks so much, Geoff. It's just a pleasure to chat to you. Thank you so much. The stream loves you. Everyone, there's Geoff's YouTube. Geoff Buys Cars. Make sure, as I say, that if wherever you are, that you follow it. It's great content, and he covers a lot of interesting angles. It's always a pleasure, Geoff, to have you in the stream. Thank you so much for tonight. Cheers to you. I wish I had a glass to rise. Cheers to you. Cheers, everybody across the different streams. Thanks for being here, and we'll catch up this time next week. Remember, a little break for the week ahead. Thanks, everybody. Good night. Night, Geoff.